It's clear that a lot of people are now dealing with this more than ever before. And I've wondered, does this have to do with something that has changed in the last 15 years that's now causing this to happen? I've wondered if that could be the case. Put your finger, is it the cell phone thing? And I think the way we use cell phones has amplified it, but I'm not sure that's it. Is it that we're just more comfortable, like sharing our junk with people? We just kind of put it out there in the open. And is it a combination of both? I don't know. I do know this. It's been around for a long time. The scriptures talk about it. So this is part of the human experience for thousands of years. And yet what seems to be different right now is the number of people who are just wrestling with this on a regular basis. Now, if you paid attention at all during the announcements, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, maybe you're trying to guess the thing that's going on in our culture that's causing this much difficulty for people. We're going to clear it up real fast. You'll know after this song. A lot of people feel that way about anxiety. Don't pressure us. Feel like I'm just a passenger on a train that I don't have any control over. It's taking me wherever it wants to go, and I have to go for the ride. My heart beating and crashing. I think that song does an incredible job of laying out what happens in so many people's hearts and lives when it comes to this issue. The ADAA says that right now in the United States, 3.1% of our population has generalized, what is it? Did I write it down? Thanks. Anxiety disorder. I knew it was GA or whatever. Okay. 3.1%. Doesn't seem like a lot of people, quite honestly, when you look at that. I mean, in our country, that's still over 6 million people, which is the same amount of people in the whole country of Bulgaria. But still, when you consider the number of people who are talking about the level of anxiety that they're experiencing, it's nowhere near 3.1%. But I think this answers it. In May of this year, a national survey was done. And they concluded after that survey that 43% of the people in the United States feel like the level of anxiety that they're experiencing this year is greater than last year. So whether it's a disorder that's really disrupting your life, for those people it's chronic, it's always happening, it really disrupts them, or if it, for you, it's more than you want, it's more than you like, and you can feel that it's increasing in your life, you've identified that as a problem. And so there's all this talk about anxiety going on in our culture because of that. And people are throwing out rules to deal with it. There's the 3-3-3 rule. Name 3 things that you see, 3 things that you hear, move 3 body parts. And they try to get you to do that when you're in the midst of anxiety so that you'll put your mind on something else so that you can rest a little bit. There's the 5-5-5 rule. Take a deep breath for 5 seconds. Hold it for 5 seconds. Exhale for 5 seconds. I think these kind of rules are probably wise to have. In a culture that's dealing with this kind of stuff, it's probably smart to know about that kind of thing, but here's the problem. Almost all the rules that I'm looking at, that I'm running into, that our society is talking about, not one of them deals with the root problem. They're all just dealing with the symptoms. They're trying to help you find a way to manage the symptoms, get the symptoms to go down, get the symptoms to go away, but you never address the thing that's causing it in the first place. It's funny, the scriptures have some things to say about that, and when you read it, it feels almost impossible. This is Philippians 4:6. It says this, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Solved it. Don't be anxious about anything. See, it's that easy. Or 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. See, it's so simple. Just cast your anxiety away. Just place it on Jesus. It's no big deal, right? The people who hear this kind of stuff, by the way, I don't have any problem with the truths in those verses. I think the problem I have is how it's been presented to so many people. It usually comes from somebody like me, who I have a lot of problems in my life. This is not on the list that's near the top. Like I don't wrestle with anxiety. I don't have anxious thoughts. My mind doesn't race about that kind of stuff. If there's a challenge, I like to just kind of tackle it and see what happens, that sort of thing. And so sometimes people like me will look at somebody who's dealing with anxiety and just say, you just got to have a Nike attitude. Just go do it. Just cast your burden. Just don't have it anymore. Don't think that way. Don't feel that way. Because I don't, it must be okay for you. And a person who's dealing with anxiety starts to rethink whether they should have ever shared that with you in the first place. Because they don't want to be judged for it. And so many times, they didn't necessarily choose that. Something happened in their life, it got stirred up, and now it's unrelenting. And the anxiety won't let them go. And so the question isn't, is the scripture right? I'm actually going to come back to it. I think the scripture's right. But how we get there is going to be really important. How do we figure this out? That's why over the next 5 weeks, we're going to try to do something different. Because for so many people, anxiety feels like it's ruling their lives. Like it's taking up more space in their life than they want it to. It's causing them issues. And so what we want to try to do is to come up with some rules from the scripture that will help you rule anxiety. These are things that if practiced over time, you can start to get a handle on it. You can start to overcome it. It doesn't have to be this thing that owns you and runs you. That's the goal. That's where we're going to go. And today I want to start with a video. I'm going to have to explain some stuff. They're going to go ahead and run the video, and I'm going to explain what's going on, and then you'll understand more as we get into it, okay? In this little video clip, there are two guys who have been exploring an abandoned industrial site. They've been crawling all over the place, and they just saw two other people coming in to explore the place too, and they decide it's time for a prank because they have in their possession an Aztec death whistle, which when blown sounds like a screaming spirit that's about to rip your head off, okay? The Aztecs actually blew these right before they would go into battle to terrify their other opponents. Here we go. Let's see how this works out. Okay, yeah, I love it every time. Okay, so I showed that video, I guess, for two reasons. One, I think scaring people is absolutely hilarious. I have loved it since I was a child. It's been a problem because I married somebody who scares easily and hates it, right? So we had some issues early on in our relationship that we had to work through. But now, like, I'll walk into the kitchen. If she doesn't see me coming, she'll scream. And I'm like, I'm here for cheese. You're kind of taking the fun out of this. What's going on here? But those guys climbing up the ladder, that's funny, right? That's excellent stuff. There's a second reason I showed you that. I want you to understand how fear works. One of the things that fear does is fear causes us to act. Did you see how fast they acted? Like, they were up the ladder as fast as they could go. Again, it makes me laugh every time. But it could be that you freeze. It's still in action. Like, fear is trying to get you to do something that you think makes something safer for you. If you're driving down County Road 14 and you're going 65 miles an hour and you suddenly realize it, there'll be a little pit in your stomach where you go, oh, this isn't safe. You take your foot off the gas, the car slows down, it hits 45, and the feeling goes away. That's a healthy response of fear. Fear actually puts up a boundary, a barrier that you run into, and then it acts as a protection. Whew, I didn't do that. I'm safe. It's good. What happens when the thing you fear is theoretical? They're not going to like me. You don't know. You haven't even talked to them yet. I'm going to fail the test. You've been studying this whole time. You haven't answered one question yet. And yet, you have that fear. These theoretical things still cause you to act. Okay? And I'm going to help you understand how it caused you to act, but I want to add one more piece to the puzzle. So there's something else. This is number two. There's a first thing that happens, but it doesn't even seem like it happened. But when fear takes place, this can happen in a split second, and it can last for a long time afterwards. When fear comes into your life, your mind starts exploring all the possibilities. Well, not all. Almost all negative possibilities. When you think about those guys in the pit and they heard that screaming sound, their mind made a split-second decision about what they thought was going on, and they thought, I'm going to die, I'm getting out of here. But because the mind doesn't stop, how many of you want to bet that the guy on the bottom of that ladder thought, oh great, I'm on the bottom, I'm going to die before I get out of here, right? It's going to get me. Or they're laying home at night, trying to go to sleep, and one of them thinks, I hope nothing followed me home. You're laughing because you know that's exactly how our mind works, right? It starts going, and it considers all the negative possibilities that could possibly be out there, and it tortures us. By the way, if you're paying close attention, I just described something, because one of the actions that fear can result in is anxiety. It's this belief that I'm going through all the possibilities that could go wrong, and I'm coming up with some sort of game plan so that I can control the outcome and this doesn't take me down. And your mind just goes warp speed, and anxiety is an offshoot of fear. Now, there's one more thing. There's one more thing that fear does that I think is going to be really important for you to see. I'm going to take this out of the scriptures. This is out of Matthew chapter 8, and I want to give you a little background before I read it. So we know that at least 6 of the 12 disciples were professional fishermen who actually fished on the lake this story is on. They have experience. There could have been as many as 8. There's 2 others who were mentioned, and we don't know if they were like palling around after everything kind of fell apart or if they really had experience as fishermen. So 6 to 8 of the disciples have experience as fishermen on the lake where this is about to take place. Okay? Verse 23 of chapter 8. And then Jesus got into the boat, and his disciples followed him. This all seems reasonable. Suddenly, a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the water swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. There's actually a very large mountain range to the north of the Sea of Galilee. And this is a phenomenon that everybody, if you live in the area, you know this can happen. If there's exceedingly cold weather on that mountain, it will rush down the mountainside, come across the Sea of Galilee that sits in this big cup, and will cause all kinds of big waves. These are sudden storms. They're very choppy. They're very rough, but they don't last forever, okay? Everybody kind of knows this if you live there. The locals were able to tell us about this kind of stuff. They know that this happens. So this is not some surprise thing that they have never seen before. Okay? But this is their response. Verse 25. The disciples went and woke him up, saying, Lord, save us. We're going to drown. It's not exactly what they said. They're trying to make sure that you understand the intent of what they said. Here's what they actually said. This is a more literal translation. We're going to be destroyed. We're going to be destroyed. Does this sound like a bunch of seasoned guys who know what they're doing? Come on. They know the water. They know the type of storm. They know the boat that they're in, and they know the person who has immense power is taking a nap in the boat. Maybe if he's not concerned, I shouldn't be concerned. But here's what happens. When fear floods your life, it overrules logic. And here's the bad part. It overrules logic even in places where you are competent and have a ton of experience. If fear gets a hold of you, all of the stuff that you could say, well, I know what to do. We're just going to bail water as much as we can. We're going to get to the shore. We're going to do this. Let's just get going. Let's just work at this. All of that gone We're going to be destroyed. That's their words. These are the words of anxious men. By the way, I've wondered if God has this experience a lot with us, right? Where a kind of a storm sweeps into our lives, and we don't like the choppiness of it. And we look around, and it looks like God seems to be okay with us being in this storm. And we start to wonder, do you care? Are you paying attention? Are you napping on me right now? Do I need to wake you up so that you can see how bad this situation is, so that you can get involved and do something about this right now? And I wonder how many times Jesus was just simply asleep, that God was simply resting because he knew we could handle the storm. He was with us. He had never left our side. He was there. And yet, maybe you could say, hey, the disciples seemed to ask for help. They did say, Lord, save us. But they said it right after, like they said it and then said, or we'll be destroyed. They're not thinking that this is going to be an easy solution for Jesus. Like, you should probably be awake for when we die. Wake up. You should see what's going on here. They had no idea what was happening because their minds were now clouded, because fear has the ability to overrun your centers of logic. Now listen, Jesus is going to respond to them. But I want you to understand, what happens here. Because I think we have the full picture now. Let's put it together. A situation that generates fear comes into your life. All kinds of possibilities start running through your head, almost always negative. They'll keep running through your head for a long time, but you've got these going now. You decide, I'm going to act, but because it's theoretical, there's nothing concrete that you can do, you choose to act with anxiety. And instead of logically looking at the situation and coming up with some sort of game plan, it's gone out the window because fear has overrun your position. And now all you're left with is anxiety. And this is what happens. Here, I want to show you a picture of what I think happens to a lot of people. Can you put up the picture with the tree? The tree is that level of anxiety that you feel. It's real. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can see it. It's part of who you are right now. That's what you can see. And it's big. It's as large as life. But there's something behind the tree that generated all of that. And unless you deal with that, you will not conquer anxiety. You'll play all kinds of games with lessening the effect of it in your life, but it will play out over and over and over in your life because you never got to the core. What I love here is that Jesus does. Now, what he's going to say to his disciples in verse 26, you have to be really careful how you read. Tone of voice matters. Listen to what he says. He replied, "You have little faith. Why are you so afraid?" He got up, rebuked the wind and the waves, and it was completely calm. Too many times people read this like Jesus is being snarky, like he's putting them down. You have little faith. Well, like he has a little bit of disdain for them. No, he's hurt. He's hurt. This word little faith is not two words. It's one word, and it's used, they're describing it with a phrase because it's the only way. There's no English word for this. And so they're doing their best to describe this. There's a lot of different ways that it could be translated to help us understand what Jesus is saying. He's saying something like, why didn't you have confidence in me? Why didn't you find a way to trust me? Why didn't you believe that I would go through the storm with you? That's the kind of phrasing that he's using here. Why didn't you believe I would be with you? This is how this plays out. Fear comes in, starts to overwhelm us, our mind races, we choose anxiety, our logic's gone, and nowhere along the line do we think, I bet you God could handle this. It would be a logical thought. It would be a logical thought, but it's gone to you because fear has the ability to overwhelm that kind of logic. So how do you fight back? There's only two ways that I know of. One, if you want to have a healthier response to fear, you choose some sort of concrete plan of action and you go with that. It's like the speeding thing. I had some fear, I choose a concrete plan of action to slow down, and I go with that. But when it's theoretical, when it's a possibility, when my mind is racing on all the things it could be, should be, might be, now you're in a different place. And I would point you to the very words of Jesus as the very thing that you need. Not in a way that's meant to insult you. You need more faith because it's an element that's missing from your life that if you had more of it, it could combat fear. That's all this is about. As it turns out, it seems to me as I look at how this works, faith and fear have very much the same mechanisms. They're just opposite. Just think about this for a little bit. Faith considers all the possibilities, and I mean all. It considers the possible positive outcomes too. Why would you consider the possible positive outcomes? Because I'm with Jesus. And if I'm with Jesus, if I put my faith, my trust in Him, faith is this ongoing relationship with God that's given me enough experience to know I can rely on Him. If I have enough faith that I can rely on Him, I can consider the positive possibilities as much as the negative ones. And so as your mind considers the possibilities, you're open to some good ones too. Faith is also an emotion that calls us to action. Did you know that? What kind of action? Why don't we bring up Philippians 4 again? Can we bring up Philippians 4 again? 4:6. Can you find that and just bring that back up? That's 1 Peter, the one before it. Bing! Prayer, petition, thanksgiving, presenting your request to God. When you are experiencing a moment of faith, it calls out of you these kinds of actions. And what's fascinating about them is these kind of things drain energy away from anxiety. They steal from it. Why? Because I have this sense of trust that I can rely on God. And when I'm practicing, I'm using this faith, I'm ending up there. Go to 1 Peter 5. And then it says you can cast, right? You can cast. That's an action that comes from faith. Faith. This belief that I can rely on God. You know what's fascinating to me? Is if you pay attention in our culture, people will tell you that you're a fool if you believe in faith. If you have any faith at all. They'll say, I believe in things that are real. I believe in things that you can know. I believe in science. I believe in things that you can trust. I have no problem with science. I'm not in an argument with that. But I can tell you right now that faith is this thing that protects your life because it will overrule logic just like fear does. people don't have any problem with fear, right? I hear people say, no, I'll just use all my logic when fear comes in my life. That's great until it floods you and you lose all of that logic. Then what are you left with? And it happens. You'll watch it happen to people all the time. Faith is a choice to say, you know what? I'm going to rely on God. And because I'm going to rely on this person I can't see, it's going to generate actions in my life that actually protect me from harm. It's going to take away from anxiety. It's going to put me on a path where I'm more calm, more rest assured. It's going to lead me to a place where anxiety doesn't dominate my life. Here's the rule. It's really simple. It's not easy. It's simple to understand. When fear shows up, turn to faith. When fear shows up, turn to faith. Now here's the problem. If you aren't turning to faith on a regular, ongoing basis and developing this over time, you won't suddenly do it when fear shows up. This is something that you work at, you build into your life, so that when fear does show up, your response is confidence with God. Your response is, I'll go through the storm with you. I know you might be sleeping right now. You must have a lot of trust in me. So I'm just going to keep going. And I'm going to weather this with you. And when you start exercising that faith, when you start practicing that faith, it starts competing with the anxiety in your life. And over time, if you strengthen it enough, it will stop anxiety from ruling over you. Here's what I believe. I believe you were made for more than an experience with anxiety. I think God had something great in mind for you. But it will require you turning to faith in order to see that happen.